always been the yes woman in the family. Yes, I'll babysit the grandkids, no matter how last minute. Yes, I'll bake those 4 dozen cookies for your fundraiser, even if I'm tired. Yes, you can use my card just this once, again. So when my 64th birthday came around, I thought just once maybe they'd surprise me. Instead, I surprised them. I booked a luxury cruise, not just for me, but for my entire family, my 2 sons, their wives, and my 4 grandkids. I figured, let's make memories while I'm still sprightly enough to dance on deck. I picked a stunning Mediterranean itinerary: Barcelona, Nice, Rome, Athens, the works. 7 days of sun, sea, and stories. I used most of the retirement bonus I had quietly saved. Didn't tell them how much it cost. They never asked. All I said was, I'm treating everyone. Let's spend time together. They were thrilled. At least they acted thrilled. But from the moment we stepped onto the ship, I noticed it, that subtle detachment. The suite I had booked, one of the nicest on the ship, with a balcony and connecting rooms, somehow became theirs before I could even settle in. My bags were taken to a standard interior room without windows. Mum, the kids need more space. You know how they are. You won't mind, right? I was dumbfounded. They smiled like it was the most normal thing. And for a second, I almost said yes. That's what I'd always done. But this time, I didn't answer. I just followed the porter to my new room, room 7, 1, and 4, tucked in the belly of the ship. My view? A metal wall. I told myself, it's okay. This is about making memories. That evening, I dressed in a lovely navy dress, one I hadn't worn since my husband's funeral. I stood outside the suite, hoping to walk in together to the welcome dinner. But the door didn't open. No one answered. Later, I found them already in the first-class dining room, laughing, glasses raised, a live quartet playing. I wasn't invited. Instead, I had dinner in the economy buffet with a kind Australian couple who mistook me for someone else at first. I smiled, made small talk, and swallowed my shame with overcooked pasta. Day 2 was similar. The ship had a private beach stop for premier guests. Guess who got left behind on the main deck while my family went snorkeling and sipping cocktails? Me. Oh, we thought you'd want to relax. Chloe, my daughter-in-law, chirped when they returned. Plus, you get seasick easily, right? Seasick? I raised 2 boys on fishing trips and once spent a month crewing a sailboat with their father, but they didn't even ask. By day 3, the whispers from other passengers began. Aren't you with the Kingsley family? Oh, you're their mother? The tone, the pity, it sank deeper than the ocean beneath us. But the final straw came on day 4, during the captain's gala. It was a black tie affair. I wasn't even given the time or room number. I learned about it from a flyer left near the vending machine on deck 7. When I arrived, they were all seated at a chandelier-lit table, toasting to family and laughing over caviar. Not a single seat saved for me. That night, I returned to my metal wall room, kicked off my heels, and stared at the ceiling for hours. I wasn't sad. I was done. They thought I wouldn't mind, that I'd just swallow it like I always had. But the next morning, they came back to the suite to find it empty. And by evening, a bill was waiting at their door. They didn't notice I was missing until the afternoon of day 5. It was little Lily, my youngest granddaughter, who asked innocently, "Where's Grandma?" That's when it hit them. They hadn't seen me all day. Not at breakfast, not at the pool, not at the excursion meeting point. The same woman who had bought them this entire dream vacation had quietly vanished. I imagine the panic began with a few texts. Then maybe they knocked on my door. Room 7114. No answer. Of course there was nothing to find. By then, I had checked out of that glorified closet of a room and relocated myself somewhere much nicer. Let me backtrack. After the captain's gala, while they were drunk on champagne and entitlement, I had walked straight to the front desk and asked for the guest services manager. A lovely woman named Marissa greeted me, and I calmly handed her my booking papers. I explained that I, not my sons or their wives, was the primary booking guest for the entire cruise, including the luxury suite they'd been squatting in, without so much as an offer to share. Marissa's face was priceless when I asked her to 1. Lock them out of the suite, 2. Cancel all incidentals on my tab that didn't have my name on them, 3. Remove their access to the first-class lounge and dining privileges. Yes, I said with a smile, they'll be shocked, but not nearly as shocked as I was to eat alone for 4 days straight. She nodded with sympathy and a touch of admiration. Next, I moved into a beautiful panoramic suite, yes, on the very same floor as the one I'd paid for them to enjoy. This one had a hot tub and a private terrace. I even had flowers delivered to myself with a card that said, "To the one who never asks for anything, until now." I spent day 5 like royalty. A massage in the spa, a lobster lunch by the private pool, an art auction where I even won a small seascape painting. And that evening, as the family frantically searched for me, I was being serenaded by a jazz trio, sipping the best wine I'd had in years. That's when Marissa texted, "They just returned to the suite. I handed them the updated bill and your note. Would you like to be notified of their reaction?" I didn't even need to ask. From what I later heard from a sweet older gentleman who overheard the commotion, they were livid. Their key cards no longer worked. Chloe apparently stomped down to the desk demanding to know what kind of mistake this was. Thomas, my eldest, turned red in the face, and Jason, my younger son, kept repeating, "But she wouldn't do that. She wouldn't." Oh, but I did. Inside the suite was a neatly folded note that read, "To my loving family, you boarded this ship with your expectations. I boarded with hope. I paid for us to be together, not for me to be treated like a burden. So here's a new arrangement. Enjoy the economy experience I was gifted for 4 days. And as for the charges you racked up on my card, spa treatments, champagne private tours, they're now under your names. Fair's fair. With love, and finally some self-respect, Mum." I never signed it with my full name. I didn't have to. That night, I took a stroll on the upper deck under the stars. For the first time in years, I felt free. Not cruel, not petty, just seen by myself. As for the family, let's just say they were now learning what it felt like to be invisible. But the cruise wasn't over yet, and neither was the lesson I had in store for them. They didn't speak to me the next morning. Not a word. I spotted them at breakfast down in the main dining room, the one reserved for economy class guests, the same one where I had quietly eaten 4 lonely meals while they laughed upstairs in the VIP lounge. There they were now, my 2 sons, their wives, and even little Lily looking puzzled, clutching plates of rubbery scrambled eggs and dry toast. I'd be lying if I said I didn't pause for a moment at the entrance, just to take it all in. Not one of them looked up at me. I walked past slowly, just close enough for my presence to be noticed, but far enough not to offer them the comfort of conversation. I took my seat in the panoramic restaurant, the exclusive one on deck 14, where a waiter remembered my name and poured my tea just how I liked it. What I didn't know at the time was that the bill incident had caused quite the stir. Apparently, Chloe had tried to argue that it was a misunderstanding, demanding that someone correct the mistake and let them back into the suite. The guest services manager simply pointed to the signature on the reservation file, mine. Jason tried to be slick and talk his way around it. He told them I had early signs of forgetfulness, implying I must have done it in error. But they'd already pulled security footage. There I was, perfectly coherent, smiling and calm, explaining exactly what I wanted done. There was no mistake. Their perks were revoked, their privileges were gone. And the charges? Well, the total bill was now in their hands. Nearly $6,400 in extras they had merrily charged under my name without a second thought. It was a lesson in boundaries, long overdue. Around midday, my eldest Thomas caught me alone by the library lounge. He didn't say hello. He didn't ask if I was all right. He just leaned on the railing beside me and muttered, "You really blindsided us, Mum." I closed my book gently and replied, "No, Thomas. What blindsided me was being treated like an afterthought. Again." He blinked. I continued, "You all walked into that cruise suite like it belonged to you. Didn't even pause to think how I might feel. 4 days. 4 days I sat alone, and not one of you noticed. Not one of you said, 'Mum, are you okay?' or even offered to trade meals for a night. You thought I didn't mind, and that's the problem." He was quiet. That kind of silence that tells you someone knows you're right, but their pride is too thick to admit it. Still, he looked tired. Not angry, just worn out. "We didn't mean to hurt you," he said, almost too softly to hear. I nodded slowly. "That's the thing about being ignored, Thomas. It doesn't always hurt because it's intentional. Sometimes it hurts because it's effortless." We stood there for a moment. He didn't apologize. Not yet. But I could tell the wheels were turning. Later that evening, I heard from Marissa that Chloe had tried to swipe a bottle of champagne from the minibar in their new, much smaller cabin. When she was told it would be added to their personal account, she muttered, "This trip is a disaster." To which Marissa allegedly replied, "Only for those who expected to ride free." I nearly laughed when I heard that. The cruise had 2 days left, and I had one last plan in mind before we disembarked. One that would leave no room for doubt about how I deserved to be treated from now on. By the 4th evening, word had spread across the ship like a tide washing up the truth. I was no longer that sweet older woman traveling with her big family. I was the woman who had flipped the cruise hierarchy on its head. And my family, well, they were now the ones seated by the window near the service doors in economy class. You could see the resentment growing behind their eyes. But I wasn't done. I had booked a table for 10 at La Lumiere, the ship's exclusive fine dining restaurant, for the final gala night. A meal with 7 courses, live string quartet, and the kind of service that made you forget you were even on a ship. The invitation went out in the form of handwritten cards, slipped under each of their cabin doors. It read, "You're invited to join me for dinner tonight at 7 p.m., La Lumiere, Deck 15. Come as you are, Mum." I showed up early, of course, wearing a deep green silk shawl that used to belong to my mother. My hair was up, makeup done with a little help from a lovely assistant on board, and I felt finally seen. They arrived hesitantly, one by one. Thomas came first, alone, then Marissa and Jason. Chloe, dragging Lily by the hand, looking like she'd just had a meltdown. No glitz, no champagne giggles, just quiet, uncertain faces. "I thought we weren't allowed up here anymore," Marissa said cautiously, eyeing the marble floors and soft lights. "You are," I replied, smiling. Tonight, everything is back under my name, but there's a catch. They froze. The waiter poured wine. The menu was placed gently in front of us, but none of them opened it. I wanted to spend this cruise with you. All of you, I began, my voice clear but calm. But what I got was 4 days of silence and exclusion after giving you the gift of a lifetime. Jason scoffed under his breath. I ignored it. So I decided this final dinner would be a new beginning, a test, if you will. Chloe tilted her head. A test? I nodded. Then I reached into my handbag and pulled out a thin stack of envelopes, one for each of them, custom printed, embossed with the cruise line seal. Inside are individual invoices, I said plainly. Breakdowns of all the charges you racked up while I was sitting in a cafeteria eating reheated lasagna. Jason's face flushed. Chloe grabbed hers and tore it open, only to find a total of $2,816 for luxury spa treatments, cocktails, and 3 excursions she'd apparently signed under my name. These are real charges, I continued, on my account that you never asked permission to use. So tonight, you'll decide. Either you pay your share back or we go home with things unresolved. Marissa blinked. You're making us pay for it? No, darling, I said gently. You already did. I'm simply asking you to respect that it came at a cost to me. The table was silent. Only the music of the quartet filled the room. Then Thomas spoke. Mom, I'm sorry. I looked at him. His eyes were red. He looked ashamed, truly. I didn't realize how much we hurt you. I should have noticed. I should have said something. I reached across the table and took his hand. Thank you, Thomas. He turned to the others. We should all apologize. But Chloe wasn't moved. She shoved the envelope back toward me. This is ridiculous, she hissed. You're punishing us like children. What kind of mother does that? I held her gaze. A mother who deserves respect. And then she snapped. She pushed her chair back, grabbed Lily's hand, and stormed out of the dining room. No goodbye, no apology, just fury. I watched her go, and for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel guilty. I felt at peace. The rest of us sat and ate in silence for a while, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was healing. Jason even helped the waiter clear the dishes, and Marissa gave me a hug before dessert. The night closed with warm conversation and a few quiet tears. The family I once felt invisible around was now looking at me, not through me. And as for Chloe, well, she'd be in for a surprise when she opened her bank app the next morning, because I wasn't done just yet. I woke up the next morning to the gentle rocking of the ship and the announcement that we'd be docking soon. But unlike the past few mornings, there was no rush of energy from down the hallway. No giggles, no flip-flops pattering toward the buffet. It was quiet. I dressed slowly, savoring the moment. I had breakfast, alone, but not in economy this time. I chose the small veranda cafe overlooking the sea, where they served eggs Benedict and strong coffee. It was peaceful, honest. And then I got the call I had been expecting. Mrs. Harland, came the voice from the reception desk. Miss Chloe asked us to notify you. She's contesting the charges to her room. I smiled gently. Of course she is. You see, the invoices I handed out the night before weren't just for show. I had spoken with the cruise line's billing office on day 2, right after I discovered their little upgrade scheme. I had every charge reassigned from my account to each of their rooms, properly, legally, with my name removed. I wasn't being vindictive. I was drawing a line that had been blurred for far too long. The $2,816.40 Chloe had racked up, now her own responsibility. She only discovered how real it all was when she tried to pay for the airport taxi in advance, and her bank card declined. The payment attempt had triggered a freeze on her account for insufficient funds. Apparently, she hadn't checked her balance before setting that auto payment. A few minutes later, she came storming to my cabin. Lily was with her, looking awkward and quiet. Chloe's eyes were wild. "You humiliated me," she snapped. "I couldn't even pay for our cab off the ship. They told me my card was blocked." I kept calm, didn't flinch, didn't raise my voice. "No, Chloe, you humiliated yourself." She looked offended. "You're my mother. I'm your mother-in-law, and even then I am not your ATM. I am not your servant, and I am certainly not your invisible backup plan." She blinked, stunned, as though it had never occurred to her I could speak to her like that, like an equal, like a woman with limits. I handed her an envelope, like the one I'd passed out at dinner the night before. Inside was a handwritten note from me. This was never about the money. It was about value. Mine. Yours. You get to decide what you do with that from here on out. She said nothing, just stood there for a moment, then turned and left without another word. I don't know what happened after she walked off, but I know what happened during my journey home. Marissa and Jason sat beside me in economy, by choice this time. Jason leaned over before takeoff and quietly said, "Mom, I'm sorry. We were wrong." Marissa added, "You should really write a book, Mom, or at least a column." As for Thomas, he didn't say much that morning. He stayed behind in port with the kids to finish their packing. But just as my plane was boarding, I received a message from him that made my breath hitch. "Mom, I booked another cruise. Just for us. No hidden guests, no nonsense. My treat this time, I want to do it right." I cried. Quiet tears. The kind that slip out not from pain, but from something being stitched back together. This trip gave me more than I expected. Yes, it brought pain, but also healing. It reminded me that being the glue of a family doesn't mean being stepped on, that kindness has limits, and that it's never too late to stand up firmly and lovingly for yourself. I don't know if Chloe will ever grasp what she truly lost, but I do know what I gained. My voice. And this time, I'm not eating alone.